All right, let's go ahead and kick us off because we have a lot to get to today. I know more people are coming in from the waiting room and we have some guest links going out, but let's get started. So hello, everybody again, and welcome back. Today is December 9th. This is MasterAdvisor number 43. We have a couple of great travel advisors to speak to today, but first I just want to make some announcements. The first is that, as always, the speaker view is going to be the best way to watch today's session. And then the chat, if you want to open it up, on your bottom right is open, and we're going to grab as many questions and comments as we can today as we go along. So please don't be shy. Drop any questions or concerns in there, and we'll address them as we go along today. I do want to announce that today is our last session for 2021, and I just want to take a minute just to thank everyone who joined me this year. I know this year's kind of flown by. I was saying at the end of the last session that we were sort of anticipating the end of 2020 for so long, and 2021 sort of flew by, way quicker than I can imagine. But I want to thank everyone who joined me this year, all the guests, all the advisors. It's really been a special part of my week to see you all and to interact with you and to sort of grow this community. So thank you so much. We will be back in 2022. Please keep an eye out for registrations, schedules, things like that. But again, thank you all so much, and I really can't tell you how much I appreciate the interactions this year. If you missed any of the sessions and you want to catch up, they're all hosted on our YouTube page, and we'll go ahead and drop the link in the chat box right now, so you can subscribe if you want. You can check out the past sessions. We've really done a lot this year. We've covered a lot, and if you have some time over the holidays and you want to sort of catch up and you want to see what other advisors have said, please go ahead in there, like and subscribe, and help us keep growing this community. All right, I see a question in the chat about, am I in a hotel room? Yes, I'm at the USCOA annual conference right now in San Diego. So I am in a hotel room. The internet looks like it's working though, so thank you to Hyatt for that. But if anyone has questions about USC or San Francisco or San Diego, I can probably answer them as we go along today. But I want to kick us off today. I want to introduce our two guests for today. Today, TMR is very happy to welcome Simeon and Kumar, two up-and-coming travel advisors who are here to talk about their perspective on the industry and give their thoughts on their business. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but they are a part of City Express Travel, which is an Illinois-based travel agency that specializes in group travel. Again, I'm going to let them tell us a little bit about it, but it's a family-run business that was started by their father. And I want to say to both of them, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here today. And if you want to give us a little introduction about your business and your agency.
Yeah, how's it going? Thank you so much for having us, Dan and TMR. We really appreciate it. I'm Tim, by the way, and this is Simeon. And we're not twins. We are just brothers. He's a couple of years older than me. But yeah, no, I mean, you pretty much kind of explained it well. We've been, our dad started the business in 1986. And since then, Simeon and I have joined about 8 and 9 years ago. And we mostly serve churches and schools and groups all over the country. And we are mostly religious affiliated, but even if you're not really religious, some of the work that our folks do is amazing, whether it's medical missions or water filtration systems or school building, whatever it might be. That's pretty much what we do. And we set up airfare for everybody.
And our most of our teams, I mean, they're all based out of the United States, but we send them pretty much worldwide. We've got teams even right now. There's folks in Africa, Central South America. When it opens up a little bit more, we'll send people over back to East Asia, to Europe as well. So we send our people pretty much all over the world.
Okay. Yeah, so I want to ask, I have so many questions. I want to ask about sort of growing a niche. I want to ask about group travel, which I know a lot of advisors on this session are going to be interested in. But I do want to ask you about your decision to sort of get into the travel agency business, because so many discussions we've been having over the past 4 or 5 years has been about attracting new talent to the industry. And I want to give you an opportunity to sort of share your experience about making the decision to sort of dedicate your careers to the travel agency business. What was that decision like? What are your sort of earliest memories of your dad in the travel agency business and things like that?
Yeah, great question.
Yeah, good question. So I'll start by saying this. I never in a million years envisioned myself working here. Our dad is still here. Of course, he kind of runs most of the big picture things. Simeon and I do all the day-to-day, the sales and everything. But no, I honestly never had an interest growing up. I was planning to go to school for like kinesiology and maybe go to PA school. I ended up taking a break from school. My dad needed somebody to kind of help with the workload. And 9 years later, I'm here. And at that time, my brother was actually working in Colorado for an organization called Young Life. And I was like, hey, man, come back home, check this out. What we've got going on here is pretty cool. And that kind of just sparked everything.
Yeah. And for me, it was pretty much the same. Like, I never thought growing up that like, oh yeah, I'm going to, you see dad go to work all the time. And Tim and I were never like, oh yeah, we want to do that. It's like, no, that's the last thing in the world that we want to do. And on my side of things, I was in guest services for almost about 8 or 9 years working for camping out in Colorado. And so, yeah, when I was out there, Tim started the year before I did, and he called me and he's like, hey man, there's something great going on here. Dad's got this great business. I know we never thought we wanted to do it, but you should come back because we could probably do some pretty incredible stuff together. And 8-9 years later, we're doing it together now, which is awesome.
Yeah, so I know you have such a firsthand and personal story with your father and with sort of growing up around this business. But what was your perception before you got into the business of what your dad did and your perception of the travel agent industry in general? I mean, what kind of things did you expect that maybe didn't meet your expectations, or what kind of things surprised you when you finally got into the business?
Yeah, so I mean, thankfully we grew up, we were really, really blessed to be able to be a part of the industry. And so we were able to travel a lot. We went on vacations a lot. We flew all the time. Back when, even people probably remember when British Airways used to give the little kid backpacks and like all the goodies in it. I mean, we've been in the industry for such a long time. And so it really didn't start to like hit for us of like getting interested in the business side of it until later on in life. But we were introduced to it from such a young age that it was something that we always loved.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, that helped us kind of develop a passion, because honestly, when you get to see the world a little bit and you're taken outside of your hometown or your state or your country, and you get to look around, I mean, it's a huge blessing, but it makes you develop a passion for wanting to send people all over the world.
Yeah, that is interesting. And I know I've spoken to, again, this is our 40, I said it at the beginning of the session, this is our 43rd one. And I've spoken to so many advisors who have gotten into the business because they have a familial connection. And I know there's probably a lot of advisors on this call who have a father or a mother or a family member who started in the business and sort of attracted them to it too. So again, I would love to hear from you if anyone wants to drop their stories in the chat. But you spoke about the decision to get into the industry. And I mean, from your point of view right now, because I know this is a discussion the industry is going to continue to have over the next few years. I mean, do you have any advice for the decision makers about how to get more young people into the industry, how to market the career, and how to market the attractive points of the career that are a lot, but maybe people aren't aware of right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's such a $1 million question that people are asking. I mean, we got to meet each other at the ASTA webinar or conference in Chicago, and we were just like, hey, let's maybe see if we can do this. And, you invited us on. And I think that's kind of where it starts. One is just going to a lot of these community events if you're able to. But in terms of getting the younger generation, I think, of course, it was a family how we got started. But, if you don't have that networking or capability with a family, I think naturally our generation is going to start wanting to become more involved. I think when people look at the travel agency business, people think it's so old and it's, oh, you work for a travel agency. But I mean, there are a lot of still brick and mortar companies like ours who are out there. And I just think that over time, our generation really does love traveling. They love seeing the world. They love exploring. And I just think naturally over time, people are going to start drifting into saying, okay, well, maybe I can make a living out of this.
Yeah.
And I think if there's something positive that came out of the pandemic, outside of all the negative, one of the things is that the travel advisor has come into a big role for people across generations. And no matter what age you are, like we have a lot of friends our age who have traveled, who have gone on tours. In the past, they would have just booked it on their own. Now they're like, hey, you guys have any recommendations? Is there a company I can work with? I don't really fully understand the rules for vaccines or quarantine. So all of a sudden, the industry is booming in terms of us being able to provide information for people. So I think the younger generation is starting to see that. And they're recognizing, hey, there's a lot more people in the industry, and this would actually be a really fun industry to get into as well. So
yeah, but I also want to point out, because something you mentioned is when you had this conversation about joining the business. I mean, there are practical things that make this profession attractive too. I mean, I know you sort of mentioned the pandemic, and that's made a lot of people realize they want the flexibility to be able to work at home and to be able to work on the road, which this career does provide. And there is a level of compensation in it and being your own boss that makes this career attractive. And I'm wondering if that's something that you were swayed by too.
yeah, I mean, at first for both of us, I mean, we came into it, and again, with our dad being an entrepreneur and starting his own business, when we came into it, it was all learning. Hey, learn how to do this, learn how to do that. I will say, they don't really tell you what it's like when you're running your own business and how much work it actually takes. That is one of the things that I don't think either one of us expected, how much the ownership side of a business looks like. On the travel consulting side of it, I mean, there's a lot of fun to be had in that. But some of the expectations were kind of blown out of the water once we started getting into the ownership side of it.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. We have a comment in the chat about someone who had a similar experience. Maureen says she worked with her mom, who started a business in 2012, and she joined 4 years later. Again, so this is not unfamiliar to a lot of advisors, sort of following parents into a family business. But you mentioned learning and expectations about being a business owner. What were the most difficult things to sort of wrap your head around when you first got into the business? What were the biggest responsibilities that you didn't really expect to take up a majority of your time or to take up a majority of your effort when you initially jumped in?
Well, I'll say outside of just the business realm is working with your family every day and seeing each other. I mean, we all love each other. We work with each other great. I mean, my brother is like my best friend, but it definitely gets tense. And once you get over that, I think the most important thing is, one, you have to have a good relationship with your family. It's not for everybody. And I've worked for a family business before when I was in college, and some people, it just doesn't work out well. But that's just that's the one thing that I would point out there. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Dan.
Well, I mean, we had a mother-daughter team on earlier this year or late last year, and they mentioned that one of the most difficult things they had to do was sort of figure out where the lines were between personal business and business. And is that something do you have any set rules, like we don't talk about business when we're here, anything like that? Or is it just sort of a natural thing that happens?
Yeah. So here's one thing I'll say with that. I think more than anything, that my dad has really set the bar high in terms of how to bring us into it. Not one day in the past, like almost decade of working here, has it been where my dad is like, I'm the boss, you guys are beneath me. From day one, he came in and is like, hey, this is our family's business. We do this together. You guys are at the same table that I am. Let me teach you exactly what I did. So there was never like this hierarchy of I'm the big guy and you guys are beneath me. And I think having him set that from the very beginning has made the dynamics so much easier for us to work together. And like any business, I mean, you're going to butt heads, and when you're a family business, for sure you do. But we've been able to blend like the business life and the family life together really well. The other reason being that my dad's always reminded us that this company is what put food on our tables since we were babies. It's what helped us get through college. It put clothes on our backs and a shelter over our head. So there's also that excitement and ownership that he's given to us to say, like, this is what's going to provide for your guys' family and your kids' college as well. So I think him setting that from the very beginning has really made it, that much better.
Right. And then there's got to be a mutual understanding there again. And some people, you hear horror stories all the time, but when it works out well, it works out very well. And the other thing is just kind of understanding everybody's roles. I mean, Simeon and I, myself, and our dad, everybody kind of knows what to do, whether it's doing the sales, whether it's doing the marketing, whether it's doing, big picture concepts. And I think kind of developing, who's in charge of what, that really does help to kind of set the tone for everything working together.
Okay. So I want to go back to the sort of the question before, is that you mentioned getting in and realizing that there is a lot more to come with entrepreneurship than just selling travel or knowing about destinations. I would love to hear your perspective on what was most difficult to learn coming into the business, what things were most challenging to get your head around, And what did you need most help with when sort of stepping into this role?
For me personally, I think it was the hiring experience and the interview process with people, where you'd get applications coming in like crazy, and you'd reach out to people, you do your interviews, you do another interview, and then you don't hear from them, or figuring out, hey, who is the right person for the role that you're looking for, whether it's needing an admin assistant or another travel agent or whatever it is that we're looking for. How do you figure out who that person is going to be that's going to be in here Monday through Friday and help you to grow your business? And so for us, it was, hey, there's a lot of speed bumps along the way. Maybe some people weren't really fit for the roles that they were supposed to be. And the other part is making sure we're trying to create a culture here as well, because at the end of the day, you're at your job most of your life. And so part of the difficulty is making sure you can find the right people that get along together. It's hard to read those dynamics in an interview. So when you're bringing in people, it's just building the company. I feel, for me at least, that's kind of the tougher thing, I would say.
Yeah, and again, that's one of the nice perks, because that's one of the tougher things for Simeon, but that's kind of where my strength is with kind of HR and hiring. And on the opposite, my weakness was always, trying to figure out marketing stuff. Well, lo and behold, Simeon's really good at that. So again, that's kind of where the whole role defining takes place. But no, that was, one of my struggles, and still things that you got to work on daily is figuring out how to continue to bring in new customers, how to continue to reach out to new groups and find new territory to conquer.
And then the other side of the entrepreneur side of it, because Tim and I love sales, and we really, really enjoy that side of it. It's all the other, the HR stuff, the accounting stuff, the health benefit stuff for your employees, all the other stuff. And thankfully, so our mom works here as well, and she's in charge of HR and accounting. But we get involved in some of that stuff as well. So that's like the behind the scenes stuff of being a business owner, that, hey, you have to do it. It's part of what comes with the territory. But it's not always your favorite thing to have to do,
Yeah, that's interesting that you both of your strengths, you say sales is sort of sticks out as something you enjoy. I'm curious. I mean, can you talk to us a little bit about that? Why do you think you enjoy sales so much? Where do you think the ability to perform in that role has come from, especially with at a young age and maybe not as many years in the business as your father had? Where did that come from?
Yeah, good question. I mean, and I'll say this, in the beginning, it's definitely not easy. I mean, the first sale, I remember my dad just kind of threw me to the wolves and was like, good luck, son. But I mean, you figure it out over time and you just get better. I mean, I think one of the best things is we love the people that we serve. I think that's the most important thing for anybody, no matter what your niche is you have to love the group of people you're working with. And, again, I briefly mentioned the work that our folks do all around the world is beautiful. And I mean, as a business, you're always looking for financially rewarding things, but two, you're looking for emotional rewards or spiritual rewards. And, the pictures we get and videos of when our people come back from Guatemala or Haiti and serving orphanages, I mean, that in itself is so rewarding. So for me, when I make a call and I'm working with our customers, I get to know that, wow, I'm helping make a difference and being a small part of their journey. And I think when you can make that connection, again, no matter who your customer base is, it might be corporate or it might be you serve a sports team or whatever. I think if you can make that connection and have that passion, which is something our dad has always driven in us, passion, it makes everything else so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting because I've heard from advisors, because you serve so many different roles as travel advisors. You mentioned marketing, the HR, the selling, and I know there's some advisors who excel in one area and maybe need help in the other. But I think it goes down to what you mentioned, Tim, is the passion. I mean, as long as you have passion for the business, and I think keep that in your mind, that's going to drive your business forward and drive what you do. That seems to be the biggest thing that you have in common with other successful travel advisors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely. And, sorry, one other thing we didn't mention earlier was, along with the airfare, we also launched this year, surprisingly during COVID, was our tourism program to Israel. And actually a couple of years ago, our family and I, we had the opportunity to go December 2019 to go to Israel, just to explore and get a feel. And I mean, even selling that, which thankfully we've actually sold a couple of groups for next year already. Getting to paint the picture of what it's like to explore territories or countries, in our case, Israel or Jordan extensions or Egypt. I mean, there's nothing like painting that picture and letting people know, hey, this is what you're going to get to experience. I mean, there's so much fun in that.
Okay. Yeah, I know that's a lot of advisors share with you too. Yeah. So we spoke about sort of what the learning curve was like, but I want to talk about the other side of things too. I know when you got into the business, there had to be some stuff that you thought you could bring to the business because of your youth or because of your experience you had beforehand. I'm wondering if you could share some of that with us. What do you think helped you excel in your roles that you have now? What previous experiences or previous life or work experiences helped you excel? What do you think your youth brought to the business?
Yeah, so for me personally, because I came from a guest services background and I had worked, like, even before I moved to Colorado, I worked here and I was running a sports facility. And then from there, went out to Colorado. And then when I was working out there in guest services, I've always been able to be in a role where I'm having to manage people and manage certain, like when I was there, it was camping, and we would have anywhere from 500 to 600 kids per week throughout the entire summer and then throughout the year. So I always had an ability to manage people and work with people really, really well. So when I came to the table, I was like, hey, this is great. Like, I can bring some of that guest services experience, customer service relations, even though it's different with kids, switching over to adults and working with airfare, there's still some of that you can bring to the table. And then for me too, even with the marketing background, like when I was in college, I originally started studying marketing, and then having to learn that, from a couple different businesses that I worked with and people that I learned from that were mentors who also ran businesses and taught me about marketing. That kind of flowed into the, what I brought to the table as well.
Yeah, and just quickly, Simeon, are there any of those small, maybe quick sound bites you can share with us about marketing? Anything you would tell advisors on the call right now that maybe they're not aware of, or maybe they can do a bit better with marketing just because of your background?
Just be consistent. I think that's the number one thing, is whether it's on social media, whether you're sending out email blasts, whether you're, following up with customers. Even at ASTA, we heard an incredible thing where someone says they send out birthday cards to their people. Be consistent and have that point of contact. People always say, like, hey, I'm going to get annoyed by you, or I get annoyed by email blasts or social media posts. But the reality is, we're in an industry that's really, really fun. And so whether you're posting things about, hey, Jamaica has this new destination, or hey, there's this great airfare with Delta going on, the vast majority of people who are your customers are going to be excited to see that, because everybody loves travel. So consistency, and don't be afraid to kind of continue putting it in people's faces, because you never know what it'll spark.
Right.
Yeah. Anything you want to add on that side, Tim? I know we talked about the marketing, but is there anything you think that your youth brought to the table when you initially joined?
Yeah, no, I mean, a little bit of again, I was more, I had been in school and in college for a couple of years, just kind of figuring out. And again, I was studying kinesiology, like movement of the body. So I don't know how much I could really bring to that table. But again, I think as an entrepreneur, as in somebody who I never thought I'd be doing this, I think, again, just finding that passion and that effort. I mean, there's definitely days, everybody wants to be their own boss, and they talk about that all the time, but you don't always see the amount of work and things behind the scenes that comes with that. And I think for me, it's definitely been a transition period throughout the years of learning, wow, there's every little thing you have to take care of and do. But again, if you kind of have that drive and that care, everything just kind of falls into place.
Yeah.
And that's also the nice part about being younger coming into this world, is like, when you're young, you have that drive, you have that energy. You could do that, 5:30 in the morning, wake up and then be at the office all night. You have the energy to be able to do that, day in and day out.
Yeah. So we have a question in the chat, and you know what? Let's grab it now. I know we still have about half an hour or so left, a little less. And again, if anyone has questions, please drop them in the chat. But this is for Maureen, and she says she's part of a mother-daughter business team. She wants to know, how is the future plan for transition from your father's leadership to your leadership? Do the two generations agree on how to run the business? So I guess that's a two-parter there. But I mean, are there any plans? I mean, is that something that's been spoken about? And do you think that's important to speak about that now?
I think he might be on this call, so we're going to pass on that question just in case, so we don't get in trouble later. But no, Tim, go ahead.
I mean, that's the million dollar question. I think that we've even learned going to ASTA events or tuning into TMR webinars, is that there are actually, and this is the cool thing about our industry, is there are a lot of, family passing down their companies, especially around this time. And so I think everybody's looking for that answer of how to make that smooth transition. And now what we found out, just from speaking with people, is it doesn't just happen. There's no clean, okay, it's in your name and that's it. Dad is happy, kids are happy, that you're done. I think again, there has to be a good understanding of roles. I mean, I think as children of the owners, we have to understand it's not easy for our parents to just give up something. This is something that they've had their entire life. It's been their baby. It's their life work and their pride and joy. And I will say it only gets easier if you are looking at the business that same way as well. If they can see that you have that passion and love, they're willingly going to be like, okay, great. They want to pass it down. But there has to be a good conversation, because there's unless your parent says, hey, by 65 or by 70, I want to be done, there's going to be a hard timeline there. We always joke around and say our dad's going to be around till he's like 95. Mm-hmm. He's still going to be in the office doing who knows what. But I think there just has to be a good conversation of, okay, where is the company? Where are you planning to take it? And are you actually serious about wanting to do this? And I'm sure Simeon can add some points to that as well.
Yeah, and I think even for some of you other business owners who, whether you have people under you who you're eventually going to hand off the business to, or you have your own kids who are going to take over, I think it's just have that conversation early on. Don't worry about waiting until you're going to retire in a year. Start the dialogue now. Like our dad probably isn't honestly going to retire for quite a long time, but we've had little pockets of the conversation of what that looks like. And so if you start thinking about that early enough, when you actually decide to, hey, I'm not going to be here anymore, guys, I'm retiring, I'm calling it a day, you've already talked about that for a couple of years, so it's not completely unexpected.
And the other one quick thing I just want to add is, when I was at the ASTA conference this past fall, somebody said something really special and important, that was make sure there's a contingency plan in place. Because, God forbid, you never know what could happen one day. And you don't want to have, if your kids are serious about taking over, you don't want them to be scrambling at the last minute trying to sort out. So, whether that's working with whatever, conglomerates you work with, or whoever it might be, or with ARC and signing things off, just make sure those things are in place if you feel like one day this transition will happen.
Or like he said, God forbid something, some crazy accident or something happens, you never wish that, but be smart, be business minded, think about what will you do in case it does happen, and have that in place.
Okay. So again, any other questions, please drop them in the chat. I've gotten some comments, and I want to ask you this question, which is a little off script. It's going back to what we spoke about before, is when you initially joined the business, because I know there's a lot of advisors on this call who have built these incredible agencies, and they want to leave it to one of their family members, whether it's a son or a daughter. But maybe the child is a little shy about getting into this business because maybe her perception or his perception is wrong. Do you have any advice in having those conversations? Any advice if you're a parent or a family member, having advice with the younger generation to compel them to get into the business?
I mean, that's a great question. It's hard to say. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of parents out there who really want their kids to be a part of what they're doing and what they're building. I think also at the end of the day, it's a tough pill to swallow that, maybe your kid just is not interested in it. And I think if you ever feel like you're forcing it, or your child really doesn't like it, I think right away, that's kind of a red flag that, hey, maybe this isn't going to work. But I do think, again, our dad took that approach that, hey, I'm not going to be your boss. I'm not going to come in every day and yell at you and make that typical boss opinion that you hear. I think when it's like a mutual understanding and a mutual love, and like, hey, I'm here to guide you and I'm here to help you grow, I think that really helps develop a passion for your children.
Yeah, and I would say one of the hardest things to do is try to hand off passion to somebody else. We know, having been in this industry for as long as we have, a lot of the travel advisors who are doing what they do, have their businesses, or they sell what they sell because they love what they do. They love putting people on cruises or booking their tours or whatever it is. So sometimes it's hard, as much as you want to be able to hand that off. If your, child isn't as passionate as you are about it, it might be something that it might be hard to hand that off to them if they don't really see the same vision that you do. But at the same time, it's like everybody loves the travel industry of things. And so maybe it's eventually, if they see, hey, this can provide for me and provide for my family, and it's something I can get excited about if I get to travel more as well. For the younger generation, that's always a huge perk to it. So.
Yeah, I completely agree.
One thing sorry, Dan, real quick, and on that note, I think one of the things that we've been trying to do more is go to more travel related events, whether it's ASTA or whether it's, any type of conference maybe that's coming up. I think that's a great way to show your child, like, hey, look at our industry. It gives you a sense of community and family. And honestly, they are so fun. I mean, that's where we met you, and you get to meet a lot of people. And again, the travel industry is so big. So even if you want your child just to get involved in the industry, that right there is a cool opportunity, because they then get to maybe meet other people and maybe hear other stories. Maybe they're tired of, oh, mom, you're always telling me about this. Maybe them meeting somebody else opens up an opportunity to develop that passion.
All right. So I know your business is very niche, and groups is a big thing for you, and the specific niche you serve is a big thing for you. But I do want to get your perspective on sort of the changes that you think agency owners or advisors should make now. I know you both have a number of years in the industry by now, but you still sort of have this fresh perspective. And I'm curious, from your point of view, do you see anything that you think agency owners, advisors, or even the industry as a whole needs to do differently in order to sort of move things forward?
Good question. I mean, it's definitely been a little tough. This thing called COVID happened and it's been going on. It's been a rough ride for sure. I mean, it's hard to believe that we're about to go into 2022 and we're still going into this. And sorry, we just saw Andy. Our dad left a comment here. I was just trying not to get distracted. Hey, Dad. I think, the biggest thing that we feel is travel advisors, you are worth every dollar and every penny that people are using your services for. When we were kind of doing our pre-meeting the other day, it was funny. We were talking about that. That's been a question for decades now in the travel industry, that sometimes people don't understand their worth. And, now more than ever, make sure you're charging your fees. Make sure you're letting people know, hey, this is kind of what you're charging, and let them know why it's worth it. It's always so surprising to me when people feel like, yeah, I'm scared to charge this. I'm scared to charge it, but you are worth it. And don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Now, of course, that comes with, your service. Are you providing that top level service and care that they're not going to get from, an OTA, an online travel agency or something? So I think that's the biggest thing. And then two, I think right now is patience. The travel industry, like a few other industries, are going to take still some time to build back up. We're definitely in a better place than we were last year, but we've got a lot more room to grow. So I would say, though, just be patient. Just be patient. Keep trucking through. There is light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, trust me, we have our days where we're down, and you just remember what you're working for, what you're working towards, and let that be your motivation.
And if you're selling something that you really enjoy and you love to sell it, keep doing what you're doing. I think a lot of times agencies or your travel advisor will be like, wow, this, I've been doing this certain specific niche and it's not really working out for me. Well, you got into it for a reason. And sometimes it takes time. Don't expect that all of a sudden, hey, in a couple months, it's going to blow up and you're going to be making, so much more revenue because of this. It does take time to develop and to build. So like Tim said, have patience in that, but don't be afraid to keep staying within what you're in, and make sure to focus on that. The other day I was listening to another podcast, and she was saying on it, sometimes, travel advisors will get in and they'll try to do too many things. You'll try to do this destination, that destination. You'll do cruise, you'll do domestic, you'll do every single thing. try to focus on one niche, because the more you focus on that, the better you'll become at that. And sure, maybe there's always room for expansion later on, but if you're trying to do too many things, you'll be bad at a lot of things. So just try to hone in your focus and your energy a little bit.
Definitely.
Yeah, let's jump in there too, because I know niche has been such a buzzword for the industry over the past 5 or 10 years, and your father was clearly ahead of the curve when he started the agency. But I mean, how important is it to have a niche in your agency? What kind of repeat business does that provide to you? And then, do you have any advice for advisors who are maybe searching for a niche right now and that they want to sort of focus on something that can create success for their future?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, again, with us, it was a blessing that our dad kind of had a lot of clientele built up already. But of course, there's so much more room to grow. Yeah. Now, if you're starting from the bottom and you're just kind of reaching out there, again, just remember, it takes time, it takes patience. But I think it is important because, like Simeon said, if your hands are into so many different places, you don't really have an identity. And I think, you can even use that as a sports reference too. Like sports teams always talk about what is our identity as a team. And I think even about your own business and company, you need to have a kind of a mission statement and an idea of who do we serve. And I think trying to figure that out dives into what are you passionate about? If you right now are serving 4 or 5 different categories of people and groups, figure out, okay, who do you love serving the most? When you get that phone call or email, are you giddy about that and saying, oh yeah, I get to help set up this trip? Or are you kind of like, I'm not as excited about that. So again, that's kind of following your passion. Find out who you like to serve, and then just kind of take that ball and run with it from there.
Mm-hmm. And I would say 2 other things as well. Don't be afraid to say no, because there are some times where we'll get calls or we'll get requests for things where we're like, we don't really want to touch that. Or if it's a small group, like individual travelers to Israel or something, it's like, we're not going to really touch that because we focus specifically on bigger, larger groups. So as much as it's hard to say, I know everyone's trying to fight for every dollar right now, there are some situations that'll come up where you'll have to say no.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the nice part about this industry is that it's a community and everybody talks to each other, and there's different places that you can go to for resources. A couple of weeks ago, we had an agency out east, I think in like Virginia, and she had a church who needed help with a bunch of their groups. They had like 4 different trips for next year. She contacted us and was like, hey guys, we don't do this. I only specialize in vacations. Is this something you can help out with? Absolutely. We can definitely help out with that. And same thing for us. We'll get people who are like, hey, we want to do vacations. Some of our customers ask for that. We don't specifically do that, but we have somebody that does. We'll put you in touch with them. So that's the nice part. You can say no, but there's always somewhere that you can send them in this industry.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I know we have a question from Anna in the chat that I'm going to get to next, but the agent in Virginia, was that someone you knew and had a relationship with, or did she find you in some other way?
She just happened to find us somehow. I'm guessing Google probably.
Somebody's marketing skills were pretty good because she was able to find us. I don't know who it was, but
it wasn't you. But no,
that's interesting too, because I know a lot of advisors are out there trying to improve their website and their search engine optimization, things like that. And having a niche definitely helps with that, because I assume it was way easier to find your agency because you're so tied to church travel and group travel and things like that.
Yeah. And I think she did come across us from Google, and again, that's where, again, that referral system is so important, because like Simeon said, now if we have a company that we know who does vacations specifically, then we can just, hey, recommend and refer them. And there's nothing wrong with even offering their company, hey, anybody you can suggest, we'll give you a referral fee or a finder's fee or whatever. That just kind of helps build a relationship between companies in our industry.
So the question from Anna, and again, we have a little less than 10 minutes left. Again, if anyone has questions, we're going to try to get to them, as many as we can. Anna asks, what is something you wish you would have known when you first started out in the travel industry?
That's a great question. For me personally, I would say how frequently it changes. I mean, I'm not a big fan of change. So business-wise, though, that's something you just have to learn to cope with. And I think the one thing about the industry is it's changing every year, whether it's the contract rules, whether it's the airlines changing routes, whether it's your client, whatever it might be, COVID has completely shifted everything for our industry. So I think that was my biggest kind of concern and fear. But again, over time, you kind of learn how to adapt and get over that.
Yeah. And is that just a case of remaining even keeled, remaining calm, and just kind of accepting that change is going to happen, whether you're prepared for it or not?
Yeah. Change is inevitable, right? And I think Simeon has to always tell me that, like, hey man, change is changing. It's going to happen. So I think though that's something that helped me a lot, is just getting over that hump.
Yeah.
For me, I wish early on I would have known how many different conferences and events there are out there for the industry. I think now we've started realizing more and more how well connected it is and how much energy you can get from going to one of these conferences or rubbing shoulders with certain people. So if you're just starting out in the industry, try to get to as many of these shows and conferences as you can, because you'll be surprised how much you learn from it. And then also finding out collectively, we're all in this together. I think a lot of businesses out there can be pretty cutthroat and it's really competitive. The travel industry, we're so unique in that it's like a family. We've been to plenty of these conferences now. You know how it is. You rub shoulders with people, and it's always so much fun to see people that you haven't in a long time, and it's like a collective community. So yeah, I would say I wish I would have known. I mean, the first year we would have gone to a bunch of them, but if you're just getting started, yeah, try to go to as many of those as you can.
And it's never too late to get started.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting. That is something I've sort of discovered too. Is that the industry, there is competition among suppliers and things like that, but it does seem more like, high tide rises all ships in this industry than a lot of other industries. And like just what you mentioned, getting a client, getting a group, especially because I know how important that is for a lot of people's business, from another advisor is just something that I don't think would have happened in a lot of other industries.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, we have a few minutes. Any other questions, please drop them in the chat. I know. So we spoke about your sort of start of your career. We spoke about sort of what's going through your heads right now. And again, I know this conversation is specific to your niche, but I mean, what are your goals for the rest of your careers? I know that's a giant question, but I mean, what do you want to accomplish? Where do you want to move your business going forward?
Good question. Loaded question.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to sort of hear if there's any short-term goals coming out of COVID. I mean, what do you hope to sort of get done? Is there anything on the agenda sort of business-wise for 2022?
I mean, I think no, that's great question. I mean, there's so much. Definitely right now is the short-term goal is just getting out of this little wreck that we feel like we're in, which again is if you trust your product and you trust what you do, you're going to get through it. It's just a matter of time. I truly believe 2023 is going to be a breakout year, which I know it seems like a far off way, but I think even last year, a lot of reports were saying 2023. So in my head personally, that's what I've been saying. But I think for us, it's just one, getting back to where we were pre-COVID, but then two, only going up from there. I mean, there's so much. For us personally, there's so many places we want to send folks to. There's so much work to be done around the world. Where us as City Express Travel, we feel like we want to get more groups out to. And then, of course, it is, our new product of Israel is getting people to explore the Holy Land and getting people out there to do these tours. Because again, even if you're religious or not, Israel is just full of history and culture. And that's something, at least a personal goal for me, where we want to get people out to.
Mm-hmm. And I think in the bigger picture of it as well, pre-pandemic, we were, growing, we were getting ready to hire more people. Then obviously everybody in the industry had to let their staff go. Thankfully, as a family, we were able to stay here and continue keeping the business open and keep it running. But bigger picture, the goal eventually is to get Tim and I, our role is different. Maybe if we're not selling as much, now we have a few sub-agents that are in here doing things. We have a couple other tour operators who are helping run that. So it's, the bigger picture of it when we have these meetings is, okay, how do we set ourselves up for that kind of success? But like Tim said, right now we kind of have to focus on the short-term goals as we're getting out of the pandemic. But in the back of our minds, we have, hey, what's the 5-year, 10-year, 15-year? What's that eventually going to look like for us?
Yeah, and I have some stats from the US2A actually from this conference that I want to share. But you mentioned COVID. I mean, how difficult was that for you getting into the business, getting into a family business, and seeing sort of the destruction of the industry in those first few months of COVID? I mean, what was your attitude like, and then how did you manage to get through it?
Yeah, no, it was hard for sure. I mean, definitely tears were shed. You know, you were definitely angry some days. I mean, your emotions were all over the place, and even still to this day, because you know, as things are opening back up and vaccines are getting out and people are traveling, there still is this kind of dark cloud still kind of looming of, well, just uncertainty, and you never know. Um, but again, one thing we've got to give our dad a lot of credit that, you know, we've been blessed to have like an anchor like him right now. I mean, he was in the 90s through the Gulf War, then 9/11, SARS, Ebola, you know, all of these kind of things really help him kind of give us a lot of direction. And we were lucky that we had somebody kind of captaining the ship. Now, not everybody is lucky and fortunate to be in that position. So I think that really helped quite a bit for us.
So we have a couple of comments. We have a comment from Dave, and he just says, thank you for sharing their collective experience. I'm a new 55-year-old travel agent from Canada, and I found this very positive experience truly inspiring. And yeah, I think I agree, Dave. Like, I know there's a lot of people coming into the business now. I know the industry lost a ton of people during COVID, and that gap is going to be filled, and there's going to be a lot of new blood coming in the industry, and it's an exciting time for the travel. And like you mentioned, Simeon, that 2023, or Tim, you might have mentioned it, 2023 was the year. And that's what a lot of these tour operators at USDA are saying too. I think 40% of these active members think that 2023 is going to be the year the sort of businesses push back from push over 2019 levels. And I think that's everyone's expectation. And hopefully it's then or even sooner.
Yeah, that's our hope. And then again, you know, you have to be optimistic, but also be a realist as well. I think those are two important traits to have right now.
Mm-hmm. So I want to just say again, Tim and Simeon, thank you so much. This is again our last session for the year. This is one of my favorite conversations I've had. Thank you to everyone who joined us on the call. But is there anything else you two want to add? Anything you want to drop in before we wrap up here today?
No, I mean, for me personally, Dan and TMR, thank you guys so much for having us on. We really appreciate it. We're honored and blessed to at least have this conversation. This is the first time we've done something like this, so hopefully it was a good start. And we would love to be on again. But you know, if people have any questions, they can reach out to us in the chat, or I'm sure get our information from you if they'd like. But if Simeon, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing I'll say is just hang tough. I know everyone's been through such a tough last couple of years, travel industry, the world in general, families and everything, but there is 100%, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And yes, you know, with like the variant coming in and people having questions, those are just speed bumps that are going to happen. It's inevitable, but just stay positive. Things are going to happen. What everyone has said, the most positive thing that we've heard from our own family and friends and community is that the travel industry is always going to make a comeback. People are always going to want to travel. Yep. People are going to want to see the world. And the nice part is this time around, people are going to want to use travel advisors because they're going to want us for the information that we have. The other thing I'll say, the last thing as well, is just keep learning, keep reading up on things, keep reading about the industry trends, what people like, what they don't like, what other countries are doing. There's so much information, like Tim said, that's constantly out there, and it's a continual growing industry. Just try to stay as much on top of the information as you can.
Again, I can't thank the two of you enough. This was just an incredibly refreshing conversation. I can't thank everyone else on the call or watching this later enough for the interactions this year and the participation. I hope everyone has a great rest of your year and a great new year, and I hope to see you all in 2022. So thank you again, and yeah, I'll see you all very soon.
Thanks, Dan. Take care, everybody.